Oh, hell no. Ron Rivera? Man, Dan Quinn, don't pack your bags too fast, bruh. Come on back, Dan Quinn. Come on back. In all seriousness, Ron Rivera is who the Cowboys may be taking a look at if they don't bring back Dan Quinn as the defensive coordinator for the team going into the 2024 season. Let's take a closer look at Mr. Ron Rivera and see what exactly he would bring to this defense and if he's even capable of running a defense in 2024. All right, you can see here, the rumors have it as the Cowboys could have interest in making former Commanders head coach Ron Rivera their defensive coordinator if Dan Quinn leaves for a head coaching job, per the rap sheet, meaning Ian Rappaport. Now, something else I want to note is I don't know if this is completely hinging upon whether Dan Quinn wants to take a head coaching job or not, because it sounds like Mike McCarthy, when he was giving his exit interview, it sounds like he may just be willing to make a change regardless if Dan Quinn gets a job or not. But what I want to do into today's video, because of this frightening news that has come out the presses, is take a closer look at Mr. Ron Rivera. Now, we already know Ron Rivera has been a head coach for essentially the last decade and some change. Since 2011, Ron Rivera has been a head coach in the National Football League. The scary thing about Ron Rivera being a head coach since 2011 is he's only had 3 winning seasons as a head coach. So we know for sure, as a head coach, Ron Rivera ain't it. All right, so as a head coach, he's completely off the board. But sometimes coordinators are more so fit to be coordinators than they are fit to be the head coach. Sometimes coaches are better as just a coordinator than they are as a head coach running the entire operation. So to be fair to Mr. Ron Rivera, we're going to go all the way back to when he actually had a defensive coordinator job, and this would be the last time in 2010 in San Diego with the Chargers. Now, just a quick note, his defense with the Chargers in San Diego was number 1 in yards allowed. It was number 10 in points allowed, number 23 in takeaways, number 4 in rushing yards allowed, number 20 in rushing touchdowns allowed, number 1 in passing yards allowed, number 5 in passing touchdowns allowed, which means scoring through the air, and number 14 in interceptions. And as far as net yards per pass attempt, his defense was number 1, meaning they were getting to the quarterback quite a bit. I mean, the defense, last time he ran a defense, which was way in 2010, the defense wasn't like terrible or anything. It was a nice, serviceable defense, as you would expect. This was the year before he was given his first head coaching job, so you would expect that he would be coming off of doing a pretty decent job with whatever his last stop was. The problem is, if you take a closer look at what Ron Rivera was and what he had going on, and to be quite honest, the defense that he ran in San Diego is not like they just had any like amazing players on that defense. They had Sean Phillips, who was an amazing outside linebacker. They were running a 3-4 scheme. I think it's very important to know what type of scheme Ron Rivera usually runs. He waffles between 4-3 and 3-4, and he also plays a Tampa 2 defense in passing situations, right? So those are the types of concepts that you would expect to see from Ron Rivera. He has run both a 4-3 and 3-4 type of concept, but his most recent concept that he ran as a defensive coordinator was a 3-4 defense. So I think that's very important to note. In San Diego, Sean Phillips was probably his best player on that defense. Then you had Kevin Burnett. So his linebackers were actually a very important feature of his defense. That's something that's going to be a consistent theme for Ron Rivera. So if we're looking for silver linings, if this were to happen, one thing we can guarantee to expect is that Ron Rivera is going to want real grown men sized linebackers. He's always had that. Anytime he's called a defense, he's had amazing linebackers and he's had an impact safety. On his Charger defense, he had Eric Weddle, which probably was actually the best player on that defense, but he was a little bit younger at the time, so he probably wasn't in his prime yet. But on the Charger defense, he had Eric Weddle. On his Bears defense, he had Mike Brown. Ron Rivera has always had really staunch middles of the defense, meaning his linebackers, and then he'll have a big physical playmaking safety, and usually a corner that can play on the island a lot because he likes to play a lot of man as well. So he would usually have a corner that can play on an island like a Peanut Tillman from Chicago. Very, very interesting to see what type of defense he ran, the type of players that he likes to keep on his defenses. I think that's the most important thing to take a look at as we're really analyzing what Ron Rivera could be as a defensive coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys, right? But outside of his San Diego Chargers years, he really only had one outstanding season with the San Diego Chargers from a defensive coordinator perspective. The other seasons were pretty mid. He was ranked roughly about middle of the league in most categories. Passing defense was kind of terrible in 2008, which was the first season he took over that Chargers defense. So the first season the coordinator takes over, you kind of have to give them some grace because you feel like they're kind of really building their own unit still. But he made a huge jump. I think it's very, very worth noting that the Chargers in 2008, the first season that Ron Rivera was there, they ranked 31 and 27 in passing yards and passing touchdowns given up, which means they were one of the worst passing defenses in the league. In 2009, the next year, they jumped all the way up to number 11 and 18. So he did very, very well with their passing defense. And then the year after that, 1 and 5. So each year, the defense did get better. That's something that you can definitely say that each year, the defense did get better. But our biggest issue right now is our rushing defense. How did his rushing defenses do? If we actually take a look at it, his rushing defense by yardage was pretty good in 2010 with San Diego. But as far as scoring, it seems like teams were actually scoring. If they scored on the Chargers, it looked like they were scoring by rushing the ball more so than anything. Let's take a look at his Chicago days as defensive coordinator. What did he do in Chicago? How did he run his defenses in Chicago? I have been doing some searching. I have looked at articles all the way from 2005 written by Michael Smith for ESPN. So that should let you know exactly how old these articles are, right? But I've been doing some research, and it, like I said, it looks like Ron Rivera likes to run a 4-3 or a 3-4, kind of switches between the two. But along with that 4-3 or 3-4 defense, he loves to run Tampa 2. Tampa 2 is his passing coverage of choice, okay? So we can expect a lot of that. That defense is designed to keep everything in front of you. Players are just supposed to be attacking gaps and filling gaps and stuff like that. And the Tampa 2, keeping everything in front of you and being able to run downhill and stuff. It simplifies the defense a lot. And doesn't really make players have to be accountable for too much as far as kind of reading and reacting to the field and that kind of thing, right? So having a Ron Rivera come in here and running that type of defense, whenever we know on his teams traditionally, even on his Bears roster, his 2005 Bears roster, which was one of the best defenses that we've seen in a very, very long time, that roster was led by Brian Urlacher and Lance Briggs. Two amazing linebackers. So if anything else, if this Ron Rivera thing happens, the only thing I have to say as it pertains to Ron Rivera coming to the Cowboys is 100% he's going to make sure we have real linebackers, because he does not run his defensive concepts without an actual linebacker crew, right? So linebackers will be a position we can expect the Cowboys to make an upgrade in if Ron Rivera was to come here. And again, like I said before, he had his strong safety Mike Brown. Mike Brown was a second team All-Pro in this 2005 Chicago Bears season. So again, his strong safety played a prominent part in his defense. And this is because a lot of the times Ron Rivera runs 8 men in the box to stop the run, which is why you don't see his teams get run on a whole lot. He'll run 8 men in the box to stop the run, meaning he'll have a heavy front and then bring that safety down in the box. So he'll usually bring his strong safety down in the box against a run look. All right. So as far as the safety that will be playing that role for the Cowboys, it will probably be the more physical safety of the two, the bigger safety, which would probably be Donovan Wilson. I think Dono is probably more physical than J-Ron. J-Ron's bigger than Dono, but I feel like Donovan Wilson probably plays more physical. I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm not sure how I feel about a Ron Rivera coming to the Cowboys. I mean, statistically, historically, when he's had amazing players on his defenses, then I mean they've done pretty well. Eric Weddle is one of the best safeties of this generation. He also had Sean Phillips on that team. But overall, the defense wasn't overly stacked, and he did a pretty good job with San Diego. That Chicago Bears team was absolutely stacked. You had Peanut Tillman, Mike Brown, the linebackers, the defensive line. That Chicago Bears team had an amazing defense. And it had great players all over the place. So there is no surprise to see that the defense ranked as high as it did in so many different categories for Chicago. So if we were to get Ron Rivera from a 2005 Chicago Bear defensive team, then yeah, cool. I'm willing to take him. But oh my goodness, I do not have a lot of faith in a dude who hasn't really coordinated a defense since 2010. This dude hasn't coordinated a defense in almost 14 years now. And we're expecting him to come in here and not be using antiquated schemes and looks. And the only thing that really scares me is Ron Rivera did have to take over for the Commanders earlier this season when he let go of Jack Del Rio. And one of the biggest issues that we saw after Ron Rivera took the reins of the defense was it's almost like he didn't care. He was leaving dudes out there on an island, Benjamin St. Juste and those other guys out there that are in that Washington backfield. They were just getting left out there on the island, and he was letting receivers absolutely cook them. So they're running entirely too much man for the talent that they have. So that's something that we could possibly see. We do have better DBs. We do have better corners. So with the Trayvon Diggs, with the DeRon Bland, with the Stephon Gilmore, those types of corners, you probably wouldn't see anybody just torching the DBs, but he does leave his corners and his DBs out there on an island a lot. So that's something to keep an eye on. That's something he did this year recently with the Commanders when he took over again. He left them out there on an island quite a bit. So I don't know. Jerry is starting to really upset me because it seems like he has this weird affinity with only hiring coaches that seem like they were popular in the 90s or early 2000s. Or if it's a younger coach, he's only going to deal with them if they came out of the Dallas Cowboys system. Kellen Moore was the only young, prodigy type of coach that the Cowboys have even spent any time dealing with at all. Every other coach has been an old retread that honestly probably is going to have a harder time relating to these players as the years go by. I feel like the game may have passed up Ron Rivera. If we can say it passed up someone like Bill Belichick, I don't know how we can sit here and act like that the game wouldn't have passed up someone like a Ron Rivera. It just doesn't. Either way, we still the same old boys. Take it away, Master.
Calling me, texting me, paging me, asking me, am I still the ball? Y'all usually check on me. Listen. I'm still them boys. Woo!